Golly, that's good. I cracked myself up. I still haven't found my first Blanton's. That's different. I really like that. They're like together, like peas and carrots. That's funny. Sometimes accidents are good things. Peychauds or Peychauds or Peychaud. This is not what I expected. And hello, it is Thursday and we are Bourbcasting. It was a long day. I got up really this morning, headed to our state capital, Columbus, to do a video shoot with a private jet. Got to shoot with a private jet. That was fun. And it went really well. Very happy with it. But I got back a little bit later than I expected. So we're finally now getting to it. So while I was down there, while we were shooting, I met Jeannie. Now, Jeannie has been a flight attendant. She's now working for this private jet company. She and her husband both enjoy whiskeys, bourbons, and we got talking about different things to try. And one of the things that Jeannie said was that she asked me what ryes I liked, and I named a couple of ryes that I liked, and she said, well, I really like this Basil Hayden dark rye. Hey, Spencer, how are you? And I'm like, you lost me on the Basil Hayden. Not a fan. She goes, I'm not either. And I went, but then she said that she really liked this dark rye. And I told her, all right, I'll find a bottle and we'll do the Bourbcast tonight. We're going to do it with Basil Hayden dark rye. So why do you think she likes the dark rye so much? Well, let's get into it. This is a Beam Suntory product from the Jim Beam and Alberta Distillery. That's important. There are two different types of ryes in here. This goes for $39.99 in the state of Ohio. It's only 80 proof. Mash bill is undisclosed. No age statement. Probably 4-year. This is part of Jim Beam's small batch series, but this one is a little bit different. Dark rye is a blend of Kentucky straight rye and Canadian rye from Alberta Distillery. So I'm either going to love this or I'm not. Because Alberta rye, sometimes I like it, sometimes I don't. So we'll see. The dark rye was the first permanent line extension in the Basil Hayden lineup. So they did toast, they did a wine cask, they did several different things. But this was the first offshoot of Basil Hayden that they did. Now it's 4 years later. The brand has experienced. No, actually, it's 7 years later. The brand has experienced a little bit of a different bottle design. They no longer call it Basil Hayden's. Now it's just Basil Hayden with no apostrophe S on the end. So the dark rye is a blend of the two different ryes, and port wine is blended with the mix, right? So a popular comparison is the Midwinter Nights Dram from High West, but unlike the dark rye, High West gets its port influence from the barrels. In this case, port is actually added to the two different rye whiskeys from Alberta and from Kentucky. Trish is watching. Hey, Trish, how are you? So you put those two together and you add a little port, and it's going to get a very different type of profile. I do have Basil Hayden's tasting notes. I'll read those to you after I haven't read them. I'm not going to read them. I want to taste it first and kind of give you my impression of this particular bottle. I'm going to take the glasses off because if the glasses off, I can't read. It looks like mush. So here we go. This is the Basil Hayden. I'm not an 80 proofer, and I generally believe that Basil Hayden is overpriced and overhyped. A lot of people like it. My problem with Basil Hayden is I always taste it in my throat and not on my palate, right? But we'll see. I'm going to give Jeannie the benefit of the doubt. She and her husband like this one, so we're going to give it a shot. All right. Got a little jet fuel in my nose. All right. Okay. Nose-wise, not bad. Definitely that wine influence in here, that port wine. I don't know if that's dirt, if I scratch my It's got to be dirt. I just washed this thing. Oh well. How undelicate. All right. Yeah, I mean, at first I wasn't getting the port wine. Now the more that it opens up, and the more that I swirl it around and get it going, the more I can sense that port that's in there, that's blended in there. Yeah, it's got a pretty heavy wine influence. I'm going to put this up there just off the nose. I'm going to put it up with the Rabbit Hole Derringer and probably Legent. Sweetness, there's a lot of sweetness on the nose. Reminds me, not the fruit part doesn't come into this, but the sweetness does, and I'm talking about the Angel's Envy finished rye. Not one of my favorite bottles. It used to be. I used to really like it. Now the more I drink it, the more I don't. But that sweetness is reminiscent of that. Okay, so I'll read their nose notes. Oaky notes balanced with dark berries and molasses. I'm not getting the molasses. Actually, no. Okay, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I could agree with that. Now that, yeah. Oak. Yeah, it's in there. Sometimes you gotta be, you gotta read somebody else's ideas. And you can either agree with them or disagree with them. And I'm agreeing with them. I think that they're pretty spot on with their notes on this. There's like no ethanol in the nose at all. It seems, well, it's 80 proof, but I've had some 80 proof ones that you get. Whoo! Put that in my gas tank and drive for a little while. All right. Okay, so you know that I like higher proofed pours. 90's all right. Give me up to 100. 90, 94 can be okay. This one did nothing. There's no bloom. There's no burn. Nothing at all. It had almost no presence. It was like just a glass of water. I mean, if you're not a whiskey drinker, and you'd probably sip this and go, ah, but I have nothing. There's nothing. It's probably the most timid mouthfeel as far as like the bloom, that burn. I was talking to somebody about it today. Oh, that whiskey burn. How can you handle that? Because I'm a man. Actually, it's funny because it was a woman that let me know about this, but okay. All right. Let's since there's no bloom at all and you don't have to do any work. Let's see if I can get you some flavor notes at this point. Okay. So far, here's what I can tell you. The mouthfeel is pretty nice. It's got a nice silky type of mouthfeel to it, a decent viscosity, which I like. Something else that's unique in this particular pour is that I do taste this on my palate. There's flavor on the palate, whereas most Basil Haydens, as I've said before, I taste them in my throat. The regular 80 proof Basil Hayden and the Basil Hayden Toast both give me some bloom, some burn on my tongue. Not a lot, but a little bit. This has none. None. It's almost like drinking something that's like a 60 or 70 proof. There is almost nothing as far as that goes. But I will say that it does have flavor where it belongs, which is unique for Basil Hayden for me. So now I'll let you know what I'm tasting. And you could probably guess it's going to be port wine. But let me give you some decent notes here. Okay, the first thing we're going to focus on is the oak because it's very nice. It's very pleasant. It's very well balanced with everything else. That port wine is very fruit forward. It would be different again if they used port barrels, but again in this case they're actually taking port wine and blending it with the two different ryes. I don't know if there's any corn whiskey in this at all. This could just be the Kentucky rye and the Alberta rye and the port, and that's it. I don't know the mash bill on this, and I didn't have the time to do a deep dive to see if I could find it from somebody else. But the on the finish, I am getting some of those cereal notes of the Alberta rye. But moreover, what I'm getting the most of is that port. So what they say about their flavor profile, complex blend of caramel, no. There's no caramel, if you have a degree, in this bottle, to me. Dried fruit, yes. Oak, yes. Back notes of spice, yes. That's what I got out of that Alberta rye. And a rounded mouth feel, yes. So far, so good. My tag is sticking out. That's annoying. You can't see it, but I can feel it. It's terrible. It's terrible. I hate it. Okay. Squirrel. Distractions. All right, getting back to it. Hidden in there are some decent whiskey notes. And I love that I can taste this on the palate and not in the throat. It gives me the chance to find a little bit of that honey that's in there. Slight little bit of cinnamon. Some of those baking spices are there, the cinnamon and maybe just a little bit of nutmeg. It's really sedate. It's hidden behind the port quite a bit. But once you get into it, you can start to taste a little bit of that whiskey influence, a little bit of that rye whiskey influence. If you don't like rye, you don't have to worry. While I am getting some of that Alberta rye spice on the back end on that finish, you're not going to have that on the palate at all. So if you're afraid of ryes, this one is one that you don't have to be afraid of. It's not going to sting you. It's not spicy at all. Even though it does have that Kentucky rye in it, it's not spicy. So what they say on the finish, they say lingering dried fruit with a hint of sweetness and a rye spice. I nailed it. I nailed it. All right. The Basil Hayden toast is one that I actually rather like, despite the fact that it doesn't have, it still presents itself in my throat more than anything else. It's decent. And the more I drink of the Basil Hayden, the toast and the other, the more I'm able to taste it on the palate. But most of the time, I just don't. This isn't saying a lot, but as far as flavor goes, excuse me, this might be the best of the Basil Haydens that I've tried so far. You have to like port wine, and you have to not want there to be any bite. If you can get past those two things that would be what a whiskey drinker would normally like, then you might like this. I don't hate it. It's not the pour of the year, but surprisingly, I do like Rapid Hold Derringer. I do like Legent. So this one does work for me, surprisingly. But now we've added a little water to it. Let's see what it does. I added quite a bit, actually. I added about a half a milliliter. So, I mean, it was pretty tame before. Now it's going to be super duper tame. It's going to be kitty cat tame. Like kitten tame. Kitten without claws tame. Brought out a sweeter note. The sweeter side of that port, I think. Port can be a bit bitter. But This brought out a little bit more of that sweet side of it, almost a sugary sweetness. Not so much. I mean, not awful, not a lot, just some. The rest of the notes are pretty much the same. As a matter of fact, it's a little more sedate. I don't think I would recommend this with water. If you want a little bit of that sweet profile to come out, or if the 80 proof on this is actually still too strong for you, add a little water. That'll take care of it, because it calmed it even down more than it was, and it was pretty calm, pretty tame. Down, Simba. No problem. Goodness. It's okay on water. It's all right. It's no better and no worse. How's that? It's just a little bit different, but it's no better or no worse, really. I mean, it's just a little bit sweeter. That's all. It's fine. The meanest thing my grandmother, who lived to be 100 years old, by the way, the meanest thing my grandmother had ever said about a person was, well, she's different, or he's different. I think one time she said, oh, she's interesting, which probably is a little bit better than, she's different. Meanest thing she ever said. So I'm not going to go so mean as to say, it's different. It's interesting. It's definitely interesting. All right. I'm not going to waste an ice sphere on this. I have an ice sphere right here. I'm not going to waste it. It's a gorgeous ice sphere. It's brand new, and I just don't think that it's going to do anything for this. So I don't want to waste an ice sphere on it. So what are we going to do next week? I have some choices, and I had to go through and I had to play around a little bit, but what I ended up doing is doing a search just before I came on, because I was curious. I've got a bottle of this, and I went through, I looked, I searched, I sifted. I have never done a review. Unbelievably, I have never done a review on the Weller Antique 107, often called OWA, O-W-A, for Old Weller Antique. This is virtually currency. This bottle is so sought after because outside of the state of Ohio, it's very, very tough to find it. Outside of the state of Ohio, good luck. So Ohio is kind of an epicenter for Weller 107 or Antique 107, part of the Buffalo Trace Antique series. And I have never reviewed this. I have had it. I've just never reviewed it. So next week, we're finally going to review the Weller Antique 107 right here on Beautiful Bourbon. So join us next Thursday for that. I think everything should be okay, and I should be here next Thursday. I don't know of anything else going on, but if something's going on, we'll just change the day, or I'll make it late like this one. So thank you for joining me, and we will see you next Thursday for the Weller Antique 107 right here on Beautiful Bourbon.